I randomly came across this video. I just thought I'd give my opinion of the matter.
We've reached a point. Saying I don't know is seen as weaker than being openly and so confidently wrong about something.
There are some things that I would dispute of what she might say, and other things that I would agree with, but of course we'll get to that.
We're living in a time where people with expertise in anything are being dismissed as they're indoctrinated, they're elitists, they're on the payroll of somebody,
The problem is with those people is they're using that as a substitute because they lack the knowledge to provide, what they're critical of. Now, in terms of myself, if I don't have a clue about a particular subject or that, I won't say anything, and it's important to remain critical. People that just simply shut something off and just say, oh well, you're indoctrinated because of that, using that as a substitute, it goes down that road. Well, it's very similar with genetic fallacies. A genetic fallacy would be just to simply dismiss something rather than targeting the substance of the argument, and therefore they just simply dismiss it by saying, oh well, it's this subject or it's that, and then just dismissing it.
I saw a comment, not to me, and it was a chap who was saying, just because somebody has a degree in something doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about.
There is an element of truth to that. I can understand where she's coming from. People that are academics and that, then you generally would listen to them or them. That doesn't necessarily add up. It doesn't necessarily mean to say that just because the person's got a degree, well, that means they know what they're talking about, because let's just use economics as an example. There are people that come out the other end of these universities with university degrees in economics, came out the other end Keynesian, and there's two main problems with Keynesians. They boast off about what you call pump priming. Pump priming basically involves artificially fixing the interest rate down below the market value. By artificially lowering the interest rate, you cause the boom and bust cycle. Claim that this is something that would help them stimulate the economy. And that's a prime example. These are people with degrees in economics. The other part of the problem is that, again, they've got a degree in economics, they're Keynesians, but they don't even understand the meaning of inflation. Because Keynesians, as Ludwig von Mises himself argued...
Hi, my name is Ludwig von Mises, and today I will explain what inflation is. In the 16th century, when the gold and silver reserves of America were exploited by colonists, huge amounts of these precious metals were carried to Europe. Since currencies of the time were minted out of these precious metals, there was a general tendency for prices to rise. In the same way, nowadays, when a government increases the amount of money in the economy, all money loses purchasing power, and consequently, prices tend to rise. This phenomenon that I have just described is known as inflation. Unfortunately, some people prefer to see inflation not as an increase in the quantity of money, but as a rise in prices. Though that is only one of inflation's effects. This semantic revolution is one of the main features of our day. It tries to change the meaning of inflation, making many people call inflation not the large increase in the money supply, but one of its consequences.
Keynesians redefined the entire meaning of inflation, so how Keynesians defined it was down to basically the increase of prices. They think the cause of inflation was due to supply and demand shocks, and therefore it caused the average prices to increase, etc., or just prices increasing. That's what they think inflation means. Mises was critiquing inflation is not the increase of prices. Inflation is caused by monetary expansion. What Mises was basically saying is Keynesians confuse cause and effect, two different things. The causal effects of inflation simply means that as a result of the monetary printing, the more that you print the currency devalues in purchasing power, because for every £1 that you print, there's 1 plus debt added to the currency, and therefore it faces currency devaluation. And since the devaluation of the paper currency, that's what causes the average price of everything to drive up. Keynesians were confusing cause and effect, and yet these are people sitting with university degrees in economics. And that's precisely what we're talking about, that just because somebody's got a degree in something, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that they understand understand what they're talking about and that they're apparently knowledgeable of the particular given subject matter, because that just isn't the case.
Friend, that is exactly what it means. Like, some skepticism is healthy. It's good to question things. But when having expertise or knowledge on something is something to be mocked, I feel like that's dangerous.
Just because they're claimed to be so-called experts, it doesn't mean to say they understand what they're talking about. Let's give this prime example. Keynesian economists that are meant to be Nobel Prize winners of economics, they're meant to know what they're talking about. Listen to this.
Anyway, this was a press conference, I think at Princeton, with Nobel Prize-winning economists there to answer questions.
I wanted to see your opinion about what the government has done so far in the United States to support the economy. If you think it has been appropriate, how can we actually support the economy, create jobs? You know, those questions everybody are asking themselves.
Very legitimate question. All right, so let's hear how Professor Chris Sims, professor at Princeton University, 68-year-old, a co-winner of the Nobel Prize for Economics. I think he just was announced the winner, I think it was just last week. So he's been asked a poignant question.
I think part of the point of this prize and the area that we work in is that that answers to questions like that require careful thinking, a lot of data analysis, and that the answers are not likely to be simple. So that asking Tom and me for answers off the top of our heads to these questions is, you shouldn't expect much from us.
What do you mean, off the top of his head? This guy is a professional economist. You telling me that for the past 2 or 3 years, he hasn't even thought about the U.S. economy?
Now that really does tell you something. These are people that are meant to understand economics. They can't even give you simple answers, and these are people that are meant to know what they're talking about. And those are the type of people that you've got in these universities. It doesn't necessarily mean to say that they understand what they're talking about. So I can agree to disagree with her. What I can agree with her is the person doesn't understand. You can't just critique someone, say they're indoctrinated and that's it, and just shut them off. You've got to actually give an argument. Instead, people just shut people off, say they're indoctrinated, don't even bother gaining an answer, and it goes down the road of a genetic fallacy. So it's a bit like someone saying, well, it's the Mises Institute. They just say the name and then pretend that they've made an argument. It doesn't refute her arguments. It doesn't refute Ludwig von Mises' arguments. It doesn't refute the actual substance, the statistics, the data. It just simply dismisses people based on the name, the source. That's it, not the actual substance of the argument.
Am I the smartest person in the room? Absolutely not. Do I have a degree? Not yet. I have an HNC in social science and I got an A. I'm going to uni in September. But when I have heated discussions online with people and I say, or they'll say to me like, oh, there was one guy, I bet you didn't even finish high school. And I'm like, well, I did, and also go to uni. Well, you're just indoctrinated.
Again, she is right in what she says. I mean, it's not really an argument. You can't really refute somebody based upon, oh, well, they didn't finish high school or something like that. Or if you didn't attend university or whatever it is, then somehow they don't know what they're talking about, and just dismissing somebody on whatever it is. This is similar to people who say, well, you don't have a university degree, therefore we shouldn't listen to you. That doesn't discredit anybody. It's a dismissal because it's not actually targeting the substance.
I had a MAGA friend, an ex-friend that is MAGA, said to me once, we used to have some pretty heated discussions, and he said to me once, you need to stop being so curious about things. Stop asking questions. That is so dangerous. Like, what the fuck?
She is right in that again. It's something where you've got to be able to have a critical thought. I think it's very sad that she says an ex-friend, and so much of politics, economics, just because people disagree with one another or things. It's so sad. Trust me, I've been there. Simply says that they shouldn't question anything. You've got to be able to give an argument and that's it. But again, I can't pass comment because I don't know who the person is.
So who do you believe if you don't believe in the scientists, the doctors, the academics? Who are you believing?
Well, to be fair to herself, she is critical. She's got the independent mind to think herself, and she did say that at the end of the day, even with these academics and stuff like that, then sure, it's good to be critical and think independently, and they're not always right and stuff. She is right, it is dangerous that if you don't think critically and what have you. And she's asking, well, who do you trust then? You don't need a university to, gain information. That's kind of the point that I'm making. That's where my critique comes from. You don't need a university and you don't need a university degree in order to gain information from doctors, even from that of academia, academics. There's many, many books out there that they've written. There's much material, even ones that have got their own YouTube videos. There's other websites, educational websites. There's so much. There's a wealth of information out there that you can gather even from the internet. And you'll find even when you go to these universities anyhow, they get you doing your independent research. They even get libraries even within that of these universities, and a lot of it you're going through books that they have written. So essentially you're just, the main difference is that they've obviously got a structure, projects you have to go through. Just because a person goes to a university and gets a degree, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that they're educated and knowledgeable about something. You take myself, for example, I didn't study economics through any sort of university, and there's so much information through videos, articles, books, and it really doesn't take long for you to gain so much knowledge of a particular given subject. You have to trust somebody. They're going to trust these doctors, these academics and what have you. I can agree to disagree. That isn't to say that in universities you can't gain valuable information. Of course you can. There's a valid argument in both sides of that.
I swear to fucking almighty God, if you are just believing shit that you read on Twitter or see people like fucking Joe Rogan, etc., if that's the people that you're believing over actual people that have spent sometimes their entire adult lives researching things, if you're believing these people or little snippets on social media over actual experts in their fields, that's nuts, mate.
Can agree to disagree with her on that. Just because someone watches these particular channels, just because they're on X or whatever it is, and they're getting that information, it doesn't necessarily discredit their arguments. The person, whoever it is that gets all that information, would have to actually look at that information. They would have to understand the information. They would have to actually have arguments of their own, rather than just going to a source, accepting it as gospel and just saying, here it is, that's it, end of story. Because you see that quite often enough. To give you a prime example of that, somebody could easily say the Nazis were not socialists, and what they do is they turn to, their favoured search engine, they type in whatever it is that's going to fit their narrative, and it says the Nazis were not socialists, and then instead of actually reading anything at all to do with the article, they just go, here we go, here's another article that says Nazis were not socialists, just fling that in front of you without even reading anything. And anything that contradicts them, anything that's against what they're arguing, and just against that genetic fallacy, they just dismiss it. You understand my point of where I'm coming from. It's not really as simple as just saying, well, somebody just goes on, watches these videos, or they go on X, they listen to what these other people are saying, and therefore that just discredits them. It's all down to the substance of what that person believes, what that person argues. That's the part I disagree with her on. There are people that watch these channels and they don't actually have credence. I mean, for all you know, they could watch so many other videos. I mean, I watch all sorts. And just because I watch these people and I agree with certain things that they say and stuff like that, that doesn't necessarily mean to say that I don't know what I'm talking about. It's all about substance, folks. It's not because of the source that you use. That being said, however, she is right in what she says that someone that's studied a subject for so long, for years and years, then obviously you're going to trust that person. Ludwig von Mises was exactly that. I took a lot of my influence for the likes of those type type of economists and economic historians. And to be fair to her, she does admit even they can be wrong. Is a wee bit contradictory on that front relative to just dismissing these other sources like social media and stuff. Anyway, folk, that's just my argument. I hope you've enjoyed the video. On a side note, I was up to about 1 o'clock in the morning, well, after that, because I was watching the United States against Bosnia. I was just delighted to see, because I'm supporting the United States to go on and win it. I hope they win the World Cup. I was just absolutely delighted to see the reaction, all the celebrations and that. Of course, the emotional celebration at the end, singing together. You know, it's wonderful to see. I've even been watching a lot of these videos of Americans and their reactions. You know, finally waking up to, you know, the beautiful game of football. Be unbelievable as underdogs to see them win. You can never write that off happening in football. I mean, just look what happened to Germany. I mean, that's incredible. France and Argentina, and, you know, these teams look unbelievable at the moment. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you've got anything you'd like to add in yourself, feel free to comment in the comments section below. And of course, I shall talk to you later. Cheers.